There are countries that are difficult to conquer because they are enormous. There are countries protected by oceans, and there are countries whose armies make invasion dangerous. Afghanistan is different. Its greatest defense has never been a single fortress. It is the land itself. Afghanistan sits at the crossroads of Central and South Asia, but it is also largely landlocked. There is no coastline that allows an invading power to bring supplies directly from the sea. Instead, armies approaching Afghanistan must depend on routes through neighboring countries. And once they enter, the geography begins to change. The land rises. The roads become more difficult. The mountains begin to dominate the horizon. Afghanistan is crossed by enormous mountain systems, including the Hindu Kush. Between these mountains are valleys, narrow passes, high plateaus, and remote regions separated from one another by difficult terrain. For an invading army, this creates an immediate problem. A large military force is most powerful when it can move together. Its soldiers support one another. Its vehicles move in formation. Its artillery can be brought forward. Its supplies can follow behind. But mountains disrupt this system. A road may pass through a single valley. A bridge may become essential. A narrow mountain pass may control an entire route. And when an army is forced to move through limited corridors, those corridors become strategically important. The geography also creates another problem. Afghanistan does not have one simple battlefield. A force may control Kabul, while another region remains outside its effective control. It may secure a major city, while remote valleys remain difficult to reach. It may control the main roads, while the mountains create countless places where resistance can survive. This means that capturing the center does not automatically mean controlling the country. The map may show an army occupying important cities, but the reality on the ground can be very different. The further an army moves away from its main bases, the more difficult the operation becomes. Supplies must travel farther. Reinforcements must cross dangerous terrain. Vehicles require fuel and maintenance. And soldiers must operate in an environment that favors those who know the land. This is the first lesson Afghanistan teaches. An invading army does not simply have to defeat its enemy. It must first overcome the country in which the war is being fought, and Afghanistan has repeatedly shown how difficult that can be. But geography alone does not explain the country's history. To understand why so many powerful armies struggled here, we have to go back to the 19th century. Because Afghanistan was about to become one of the most important strategic spaces in the world. In the 19th century, two enormous empires were expanding across Central Asia. The British Empire controlled India. The Russian Empire was expanding southward. Between them stood Afghanistan. And suddenly, this mountainous country became strategically important. The British feared that Russian influence could eventually threaten India. The Russians, meanwhile, saw Afghanistan as an important position on the edge of their expanding sphere of influence. This rivalry became known as the Great Game. It was a struggle involving diplomacy, espionage, political influence, and eventually, war. Afghanistan was not simply a country that foreign powers wanted to conquer. It was a country they wanted to influence. And that distinction would become extremely important. Because controlling Afghanistan from a distance was one thing, controlling it directly was another. The British soon discovered this. In 1839, British and Indian forces entered Afghanistan during the First Anglo-Afghan War. Their objective was not simply military occupation. They wanted to place a ruler in Kabul who was favorable to British interests. At first, the campaign appeared successful. Kabul was occupied. The British-backed ruler was installed, and a British force remained in the capital. But military success created a new problem: occupation. The presence of foreign troops created growing resistance. The situation deteriorated. And in 1842, the British and Indian forces attempted to retreat from Kabul toward British-controlled territory. The retreat became a disaster. Thousands of soldiers and followers were killed or captured during the journey. The British had entered Afghanistan with a military objective, but leaving the country proved far more difficult than entering it. The lesson was already visible. Afghanistan could be invaded, a capital could be captured, a government could be changed, but none of those things guaranteed lasting control. The British would return decades later. The Second Anglo-Afghan War began in 1878. Again, British forces entered Afghanistan. Again, military victories were achieved. And again, the central challenge was not simply defeating an army. It was maintaining political control over a fragmented country. The British eventually secured significant influence over Afghan foreign affairs. But resistance continued. Afghanistan remained difficult to control beyond the major centers. The British could win battles, but the country itself continued to create problems. Then, in 1919, Afghanistan fought the Third Anglo-Afghan War. This conflict was shorter, but its political consequences were significant. The Treaty of Rawalpindi recognized Afghanistan's full independence in foreign affairs. After decades of British involvement, Afghanistan had again demonstrated the same pattern. Foreign powers could enter. They could fight. They could occupy important positions. But transforming military power into permanent control was much harder. The British experience would become one of the most famous examples of this problem, but it would not be the last. Because almost a century later, another superpower would enter Afghanistan. And this time, the invading army would arrive with tanks, aircraft, helicopters, and one of the most powerful militaries on Earth. By the late 20th century, Afghanistan had entered a new period of instability. In 1978, a communist government came to power. The country was increasingly divided. Armed resistance spread, and the government in Kabul struggled to maintain control. The Soviet Union had already developed close political and military ties with Afghanistan. But by 1979, Moscow faced a difficult decision. The Afghan government was weakening, the insurgency was growing, and Soviet leaders feared that Afghanistan could collapse into a hostile regime. In December 1979, the Soviet Union sent military forces into Afghanistan. The operation was intended to secure Soviet influence and stabilize the government in Kabul. But the war quickly became much larger. Soviet forces could capture cities, they could control major bases, they could launch large military operations. They possessed tanks, aircraft, helicopters, artillery, and enormous logistical resources. But the geography remained. The mountains remained, the valleys remained, and resistance could continue far from the major cities. The Soviet military soon faced an opponent that did not have to defeat it in a conventional battle. The Afghan resistance could operate in smaller formations. It could move through difficult terrain, and it could use the geography to avoid direct confrontation when necessary. The Soviet army could win a battle and still face another resistance network somewhere else. It could secure a valley and then discover that the surrounding mountains remained outside its control. It could destroy a position and still be unable to eliminate the larger insurgency. This created a war of endurance. The Soviet military was fighting an enemy that could continue operating across a vast and difficult country. And the longer the war continued, the greater the pressure became. The United States and other countries supported Afghan resistance groups during the conflict. Weapons and financial assistance flowed through regional networks, including Pakistan. The conflict became part of the larger Cold War. Afghanistan was no longer only an internal struggle. It had become an international confrontation. But the central problem remained the same. The Soviet Union could enter Afghanistan. It could deploy enormous military power. It could occupy major cities. But it could not easily transform those military advantages into complete control over the country. After nearly a decade of war, the Soviet Union withdrew its forces. The last Soviet troops left Afghanistan in 1989. The war had cost enormous numbers of lives and resources, and Afghanistan was left devastated. The Soviet experience had repeated a pattern that had appeared before. Military superiority could defeat forces in direct combat. But it could not automatically eliminate resistance. It could not erase the mountains. It could not shorten the distances. And it could not make a fragmented country easier to control. But the story was not over. The Soviet withdrawal did not bring peace. Instead, Afghanistan entered another period of civil war, and eventually, a new movement would rise, the Taliban. By the 1990s, Afghanistan had become deeply unstable. The Soviet Union had collapsed. The communist government in Kabul eventually fell, and different factions fought for control. In the middle of this chaos, the Taliban emerged. By the late 1990s, the Taliban controlled most of Afghanistan. But everything changed after the attacks of September 11, 2001. The United States demanded that the Taliban surrender Osama bin Laden and end the presence of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. When that did not happen, the United States and its coalition partners launched a military campaign on October 7, 2001. This invasion was very different from the Soviet War. The United States possessed overwhelming technological superiority, air power, special operations forces, advanced intelligence, precision weapons, and a powerful coalition. The Taliban government collapsed rapidly. Kabul fell in November 2001. Once again, Afghanistan appeared to have been conquered. The central government had fallen. The Taliban had lost control of the capital, and a new political order was established. But history was beginning to repeat itself, because defeating a government is not the same as controlling a country. The Taliban did not simply disappear. The movement adapted. Insurgency returned, and the war gradually changed. Instead of one conventional enemy, coalition forces faced a persistent insurgency operating across Afghanistan. The problem was no longer simply capturing territory. It was maintaining security, protecting roads, supporting the Afghan government, training local forces, and keeping control over an enormous country with difficult terrain. Again, the geography mattered. An army could dominate Kabul, but that did not mean it controlled every valley. It could secure major cities, but remote areas remained difficult. It could control major roads, but the country contained thousands of kilometers of difficult terrain. And every area that was not securely controlled created another opportunity for resistance. The coalition remained militarily powerful, but the war became a long-term test of endurance. Years passed, then more years. The objective became increasingly complicated. Was the goal to defeat the Taliban, build a stable government, create an effective national army, prevent Afghanistan from becoming a base for terrorism, or achieve all of these goals at the same time? The longer the war continued, the more difficult the answers became. Military power could capture territory, but maintaining political stability required something different. It required functioning institutions, local legitimacy, security, economic development, and a government capable of maintaining control without permanent foreign military support. The war continued for 2 decades, and eventually, the United States and its allies began withdrawing. In 2021, the Taliban rapidly regained control of the country. Kabul fell, the Afghan government collapsed, and the longest war in American history came to an end. Once again, Afghanistan had demonstrated the difference between entering a country and permanently controlling it. But this time, the lesson was even more complicated, because the problem was not simply the mountains, it was not simply the roads, and it was not simply the insurgency. It was the combination of all of them. Afghanistan's history reveals a pattern. An invading power arrives with enormous strength. It wins battles, it captures cities, it establishes bases, and for a time, it appears to be winning. But then the war changes. The enemy adapts. The geography begins to matter. The supply lines become more important, and time begins working against the occupier. This is the central problem. An invading army usually wants a decisive victory. Afghanistan often turns the conflict into something much slower. A long war, a war of endurance, a war in which the attacker must maintain its strength for years. Imagine the problem facing an occupying force. A major city must be secured. Then the roads connecting that city must be protected. The roads require military checkpoints. The checkpoints require soldiers. The soldiers require food, fuel, ammunition, medical support, and communication. Every additional position creates another responsibility. The army must not only defeat the enemy, it must protect everything it has already captured. And this is where time becomes a weapon. A local resistance force does not necessarily need to defeat a superpower in one great battle. It can survive, it can wait, it can retreat, it can return, and it can continue the conflict until the political cost becomes greater than the military objective is worth. This does not mean that Afghanistan is impossible to conquer. History proves otherwise. Foreign powers have occupied cities, governments have been overthrown, territory has been controlled. But lasting control is a different problem. A military occupation must eventually become a political system, and that system must survive after the foreign army leaves. This is where many campaigns have struggled. The invader may have superior weapons, but weapons cannot automatically create legitimacy. Aircraft can destroy targets, but they cannot build trust. Tanks can capture roads, but they cannot guarantee political stability. And soldiers can occupy a city, but they cannot remain everywhere forever. Afghanistan's geography magnifies these problems. The country is not a single flat battlefield. It is a collection of regions connected by difficult routes. Its mountains create natural divisions. Its valleys create isolated spaces. Its borders connect it to several neighboring countries. And its history has produced complex local loyalties and political structures. The result is a country where central control can be difficult to maintain. An occupying force may control the capital, while struggling to control the countryside. It may control the major roads, while remote areas remain outside its influence. It may defeat one enemy, only to face another political or military challenge later. This is why Afghanistan's greatest defense may not be its mountains alone. It is the way geography interacts with time. The mountains slow the army. The distance stretches the supply lines. The fragmented battlefield divides military attention, and time allows resistance to survive. Together, these factors can turn military superiority into a long-term burden. And that is the lesson that connects Afghanistan's different wars. The British learned it. The Soviets learned it. And the United States and its allies experienced it in a different form. The technology changed. The weapons changed. The armies changed. But the fundamental challenge remained. How do you turn military victory into lasting control? Afghanistan is not impossible to invade. That is not what history tells us. The British entered. The Soviets entered. The United States and its allies entered. Powerful armies have captured Kabul. They have occupied cities. They have controlled major roads. They have established governments. But Afghanistan repeatedly demonstrates that these victories are only the beginning. The real challenge comes afterward. Can the army maintain its supply lines? Can it control the countryside? Can it protect its bases? Can it keep its political allies in power? Can it maintain the strength required for years of conflict? And most importantly, can it leave behind a stable system that survives without it? These are much harder questions, because Afghanistan does not offer a single battlefield where one final victory ends the war. Instead, the conflict can move from city to valley, from valley to mountain, from one generation to the next. The invader may capture the capital, but the war can continue elsewhere. It may control the roads, but the mountains remain. It may defeat one resistance movement, but another can emerge. And as the years pass, the cost of maintaining control grows. This is why Afghanistan has earned its reputation as one of history's most difficult military environments. Not because every invading army is defeated immediately, but because victory can become more complicated the longer the occupation continues. The attacker arrives with strength. The defender survives. The war continues. And eventually, time itself becomes part of the battlefield. That may be the greatest lesson of Afghanistan. A country does not have to defeat a powerful invader in one enormous battle. Sometimes, it only has to make victory too expensive to sustain. The mountains create obstacles. The distances create logistical problems. The fragmented terrain creates countless battlefields, and time allows all of these problems to grow. Afghanistan therefore teaches us something different from Russia. Russia can use enormous distance. Indonesia can use the fragmentation of thousands of islands. Afghanistan combines geography with endurance. Its mountains slow armies. Its valleys divide operations. Its difficult routes stretch logistics. And its history shows how quickly a military campaign can become a long war. The invader may cross the border. It may reach Kabul. It may raise its flag over a city. But the real question begins after the victory. Can it stay? Can it control? Can it maintain the strength to continue? And can it build something that remains after its soldiers finally leave? Again and again, history has shown how difficult those questions can be. Perhaps that is why Afghanistan remains one of the most powerful examples of the limits of military power. Not because armies cannot enter, but because entering is the easy part. The difficult part is staying. The difficult part is controlling. And the most difficult part of all is knowing when victory has actually been achieved. So what do you think makes Afghanistan so difficult to conquer? Is it the mountains? The distance? The fragmented terrain? The ability of resistance movements to survive? Or is the real defense something deeper, the way geography, time, and human resistance work together? Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Mythic Wildlife for more cinematic documentaries exploring the world's most extraordinary places and the incredible stories hidden within them. In the next episode, we're heading to another country where geography has shaped the fate of invading armies for centuries. I'm Ask Studio. Thank you for joining me on this journey from Mythic Wildlife. Until next time, stay curious and remember, sometimes the greatest defense of a country is not the army waiting at its borders. It is the land, the distance, and the time that an invading army must overcome before it can ever claim victory.